Hello. Good afternoon, lovely people. Thank you so much for gathering today for this wonderful talk. We have with us today Kristina Mering, who is the founder and CEO of Estonian farm animal welfare organization called Nahtamatut Lumad Invisible Animals. She has been active in the civil society for 17 long years and has been part of both national as well as international level organizing work. Today, however, she's talking with us and sharing the best tips and experiences of her work in corporate outreach, lobby, growing consumer awareness, and building a successful organization. Kristina will take up all your questions downstairs later after this talk finishes. She'll be available in Colonnade for half an hour, so if you've got any questions, you can catch her up downstairs then. Over to you, Kristina.
Hi everyone, welcome from me as well, and welcome to the talk about lobby work, corporate outreach, building a successful organization, and growing consumer awareness. So since we have a lot to cover, I will just do a brief overview of today's topics. Since my main experience is in farm animal welfare, I will talk a bit why farm animal welfare as a career choice is a good idea in my perspective and experience. I will quickly do an overview about what Nähtamatud loomad or invisible animals does, and then I will go on and share my best lessons and experience from 17 years of working with different fields. The idea, as you probably understand, that it is impossible to share everything within 15 minutes. So the idea is that I will do 4 short overviews, and then you get like a quick glimpse into what you can ask me about later if your project or your organization wants to go in depth into any of these fields and would need more information. So that's the overall idea behind today's talk. So a few words about me. I started really early in the charity field. I knew very early on in life what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, so I feel really privileged because I know that it's a big question that many people struggle with. And so today I have done almost 17 years of frontline work in the animal welfare field. I have a bachelor's degree and master's degree in sociology from Tallinn University. And throughout these years, I've been really happy to also receive the Best NGO award from the President of Estonia and also Best Volunteer Coordinator recognition from the same president. In order to make sure that my mind stays very sharp and on top of all these challenges that we need to accomplish as an NGO wanting to change the world for the better effectively, I read at least 1 book per week. And getting into effective altruism definitely changed my life. And as you can mention, I didn't in the beginning, I couldn't add here. In the beginning, it didn't change my life for the better. I will explain it a bit because I had already been an activist in the charity field for farm animal welfare for many years. I had very strong beliefs. I was a very strong vegan advocate. I was quite radical in my beliefs. And learning about effective altruism, about effective activism, about strategies that can have a bigger impact, learning about about the question that maybe if I think more thoroughly, where do I put my time? And I can bring more I can bring more results with that effort, then I can achieve way more with the time that I have been given. In the beginning, what happened was that the people I was working with at the time were not into EA. They were also into different approaches in how to spread the animal-friendly message. And what happened eventually was that was a big failure in communication from my point probably was that I stopped working in that organization. I was one of the founders back then, and I was kind of left alone with these ideas. So in the beginning, I definitely cannot say that it changed my life for the better, but it had to happen because what happened as a consequence was that 6 years ago, I founded my own organization, Nähtamatud Loomad, Invisible Animals, and I was able to build up an organization using the effective altruism principles and questions, and I was able to implement these ideas from the bottom on. So I think that sort of getting into a fight with my co-workers about these ideas, being left alone for a moment, but then finding the good outlet has been a huge game changer, because the fulfillment that I get now from my daily work is definitely uncomparable to when I think about the times when I wasn't that into what is the impact I am bringing with my work. So that's how effective altruism has changed me. Times have been very different in these 17 years. As a teenager, as I mentioned, I was into a rather different approach. Here I am in an animal liberation hoodie, being in an open conflict with the director of an animal circus, who was, he was really not nice to animals, but I find it interesting because now this is not something I would actively engage in. And now it's sort of like, if I mentioned the recognitions I got from the president of Estonia, then it's good to see that you can definitely develop in your career and have a different type of impact with your work. So, as I mentioned, let's talk a few words about why farm animal welfare as a career choice is a good option to consider. In effective altruism, we think in three main topics: the scale, neglectedness, and tractability. With farm animal welfare issues, the scale is huge. We are talking about around 100 billion animals raised globally every year. This is an estimate, of course, because with some species we do not count the individuals, so you need to sort of make estimated calculations. And also, what is important here is that the suffering we are talking about with these individuals in very many instances is immense. There are scales in suffering, and when we think about factory farming, for example, which is the main focus of our work in invisible animals as well, then the suffering happening there is something that is even hard to imagine, in the sense that spending your life in living conditions that are not suitable for you, are unable to do species-specific behavior, and also having to go through very, very tortureful procedures, which are sadly an inherent part of factory farming, are the main reasons why people consider this an important focus. When we talk about the neglectedness, then globally the estimate is that around $200 million are being fed into the animal welfare movement. This is also an estimate without the investments into alternative proteins. I take these separately, because if we would count the investments into startups, which are developing alternatives to meat or fish or dairy products, then the number is definitely way, way bigger. But this is something I would also be a bit cautious about, because one tendency that I tend to see is that in the effective altruism movement, we tend to be relieved that a lot of financing is going into these startups, and this is good, but that doesn't mean that we are on the verge of completely solving the problem of animal suffering on factory farms or something like that because I definitely feel that we cannot rely only on meat alternative startups. We need them a lot, obviously, for good alternatives, but we need good lobby, media work, and public awareness on these issues as well. Because if we look at changing the society as a whole, if our goal is to eradicate factory farming, then you need to have very different approaches which all support the same goal. We might have good alternatives, but at the same time, these alternatives do not target some of the processes happening at factory farms as we speak. So in order to make sure that we have a wide effective approach, I definitely see the need for more funding for farm animal welfare groups as well. There is an estimate that factory farming will probably be eradicated among the coming decades. As I have been working in this field for 17 years, if I think about this statement, which can also often be heard in discussions in the effective altruism movement, then my contribution would be that yes, this statement could be true if we would increase financing 10 or 100-fold or something like that. Then I would definitely think that this is something that could happen. Because working directly with politicians, looking at EU level legislative procedures, etc., yes, the topic is being discussed, it is being addressed, but in order to achieve this very large-scale change in society, a lot of work has to be done. So if you are at a point where you are considering your career options, there's so much work to be done and lots of opportunity to contribute to farm animal welfare. And personally, from my point of view, I have a very strong interest in challenges. The difficult the problem, the more interesting it becomes, and changing the food production system, changing consumer habits, changing the way politicians view non-human animals, thinking out strategic ways how to get the media to talk about these topics. That's a good challenge. You will never get bored. So definitely there's a lot of interesting aspects in this work. And also, as you understand the scale, or there's a very wide opportunity of different tasks. You can do one-on-one lobby work, you can do media work, you can do team building, you can do research, etc. It depends on what your strong suits are. So definitely there's a wide approach to be able to contribute to this topic. So, what does Invisible Animals do? I founded the organization 6 years ago, as I mentioned, and we focus mostly on 3 larger target groups. One is the public sector. That means cooperation with ministries, with state agencies, with politicians. That's where lobby work fits in. The other is the private sector. That's mostly food companies, food production. And the third is consumer awareness. And I am definitely from that school of thought that in my experience, I definitely see that if you want to build a successful large-scale campaign, then you need to focus a lot on the consumer awareness and public attention side as well, which I will be talking a bit about more later, definitely, because I see that it's very difficult to convince either politicians or CEOs of large companies to go with these important changes if they have not seen or felt that this is something that the public is interested in. So that definitely makes the work a bit easier. So far, our corporate outreach work has influenced around 200,000 hens who are kept in cages. Our Veggie Tuesday, which is an equivalent of Meatless Monday campaign, which we run in schools and kindergartens of Estonia, also impacts around 200,000 animals in a year. And we were able to achieve the fur farming ban, which also impacts 200,000 animals in a year. So accidentally, the number 200,000 goes around a lot. I don't know why. It should be a good motivation to work on having an even bigger impact. And these have been some of our key places where we definitely measure our impact, knowing how are we doing? Are we living up to the standard where we want to be? Are we bringing the best result that we could bring as an organization? That's always a tough question to ask, but if you don't ask yourself that, then how do you know? And building awareness is important in our work, although I know that in some discussions about effectiveness in our campaign, since it's difficult to measure how good are the results that you bring with media work. Yeah, okay, how many people watched the show? Very nice. Maybe you completely pissed off most of them. Okay, but you have no idea like how it happened. But at the same time, when I think about the experience, whether with lobby work or with corporate outreach, it's so intertwined. Yeah, so the CEO says, yeah, okay, yeah, it's been talked about in the media a lot. I saw the interview, or the politicians are like, yeah, okay, it was mentioned in that TV show, etc. It's something sort of as a part of the whole, in the sense that, yes, you cannot measure it. But if you don't have it, then having, you meet with a politician or with the representative of a company, then it's way more difficult to convince them that, yes, this is a topic that has public interest, you should go with it, etc. But that's why we are so focused on good marketing as well. And an interesting thing about Nähtamatud Loomad, which I want to mention a bit, as I mentioned, we are an effective altruism mindset organization, which means that we aim for the large scale, for institutional change. But at the same time, sometimes we do direct rescues of animals. Why? And there is a very, how should I say it, I would like to think a good reason for it. I actually even did a talk at the Estonian Effective Altruism Gathering last summer, where I felt that I need to explain this, really. You need to understand this is very in the EA mindset. But as I mentioned, bringing public awareness to the topics that we work on, being very good at marketing and being very good at building this into a big issue also means sometimes that you need to take these animals and show them. You see, this is how a hen looks like coming from a factory farm. This is a chinchilla from a fur farm that was meant to close, but then we were able to save the animals, otherwise they would have been executed. So we used this, we how should I say, we mentioned, we rescued almost 200 hens from a factory farm, but in our results, we don't think that, yeah, 200 hens, way to go. Those 200 were only for the media work, only for marketing. We had media present at the rescue operation. We were later giving interviews at radio stations and at TV shows, etc. And it was also to bring up this narrative of, oh my God, what is happening at these farms? Oh my God, really? What were the living conditions? How did the veterinarians who did checkups on these birds, what did they comment, etc.? So sometimes you can do these direct rescue operations with an EA mindset. Our goal is not to rescue around more than 20 million animals are killed in Estonia on factory farms every year. Our goal is not to rescue each one of them, but sometimes we do these operations to make sure that the media is very hungry for footage like that, to show these individuals, to show that, yeah, this comes from a local farm, our local conditions, etc. So in that sense, that can be a good idea. And also being really strategic and focusing on effectiveness meant that last year, when the war in Ukraine started, we were unable to continue our regular campaign work for farm animals because we're a country that is has a direct border with Russia. All of the food sector, politicians, everyone were completely focused on the situation. So what we did, our colleagues from Ukraine contacted us and said that, okay, the situation is really bad, we need your help. Can you help us rescuing these shelter animals? Not our line of, we are very focused on not working with shelter animals. But we realized that, okay, we are in a tough situation. God knows how long this war will last. We are unable to talk about farm, and no one cares about farm animals during that. Everyone only cares about the war in Ukraine, basically. That's a generalization. But what we did, we organized a rescue mission into Ukraine, and we brought shelter animals who had been in shelters that had been hit by the bomb strikes. And we brought them to Estonia, and we found new homes to them. I got a dog, so my living standard increased very highly. Yeah, definitely. And the publicity we got from it, not surprisingly, this has been our most successful media campaign. Not surprisingly, everyone loves dogs, and it was very much in accordance with what the media was talking about. Doing kindness for Ukraine, helping where help needs to be put in. So I think it was a very good idea from a marketing point of view. We did what we could. We helped the Ukrainians. We helped those shelter dogs, and thanks to that, we got a lot of new followers. We got a lot of donations. We got so many new people joining our mailing list, who now are a good target group. They are warm towards us, who now we can educate about farm animal welfare issues. So in that sense, sometimes you need to be, it's not obvious. If you would just not go into that, oh, that's not an EA project, that's just another one of those not very thought through actions. But I would argue that sometimes you need to do things like that. Okay, let's go into the four main topics that I promised to mention. Lobby work. So, in 2021, almost 2 years ago, we achieved a fur farming ban in Estonia. It took 15 years of my life to work on that, but I'm really happy because it was the first ever fully successful citizen initiative in Estonia. What it meant was that there had been some initiatives before, but they didn't go through as was planned, etc. And for me, a definitely important part of that was that we got support votes from all the political parties. And that also meant a lot of work, because at some point you needed to tell the liberals that, hold on for a bit, we need the conservative votes for this to be successful. This cannot be the social democratic bill. And that's the worst thing you can ask from your friends who are politicians, because they are doing this because they want it to be their bill. But they were very understanding, and eventually I think it was a very good request in the sense that we got all of the parties to support it. Also conservatives, who felt a bit touchy in the sense that I think this is something that we definitely need to work on, that animal welfare and other effective altruism issues would not have a super liberal and left-wing reputation, because in order for these changes to be effective, we need everyone to be on board. That means that, putting my personal political views aside, of course I meet with the conservatives. Of course I will listen to all their talk about abortion and things that maybe in another context, I would go into arguments with, but not at that moment, because the goal is to reach a mutual understanding about animal welfare, and that's the main goal of that meeting. So the proposal was actually, within that 15 years, was rejected 3 times before passing. So there was a lot of failure, a lot of go away, this will never happen, not in my lifetime, etc. We got a lot of that. But that's okay, because I think that the last time when it was rejected again, yeah, I had to give an interview right after that. Usually it's like, if things go well, you're happy to give an interview, but your bill failed. What do you have to say? And there was a lot to take into consideration, and actually that was a really good learning point in making sure that the conservative parties are also more involved with this. So we took everything into consideration, built an even better approach with lobby work, and were able to achieve this finally. So the final stages were definitely the most intense work effort from our side. I think there were definitely 24-hour working days in that sense. But the point is also that if you want to achieve something that big, something that impactful, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of work for sure. And if I think about lobby work more intensely, then lobby efforts, which mean you talk one-on-one or meet in groups with representatives of the political parties. Yes, that's very important. But at the same time, you need to have an intensive media campaign. Politicians need to see the strong public interest. You need to have regular public opinion polls, etc. You need to have fresh data to feed them, because that's what they thrive on. That's what interests them. Very often they go with your initiative because they see that the society has an interest in it. Otherwise, they might not. They have other topics, etc. It's basically you can offer them political capital, that they can be the ones who either say positive comments in the media, etc., and then they gain the approval of that part of the society who is also into animal welfare. With the successful lobby work, definitely networking was a key issue for us, which meant getting trustworthy contacts and building rapport with them along MPs. That means that you need to be able to build a relationship with them where you can text them late at night, they can text you, they can share with you the latest developments, the gossip, etc. Gossip is so important in lobby work, you have no idea. You need to know who is in a fight with whom, so you don't mention the wrong person in the wrong meeting, and you do mention the right person at the right meeting, who takes who seriously, who doesn't, etc. Sometimes it was very dramatic. If there is a fight at the parliament, they go all the way for reasons not very rational very often, but hey, fighting is not rational, so what can you do? So basically, that meant building a lot of context within the parliament members. And a lot is done behind the scenes. When I think about the official meetings where, I don't know, either whether ministers or committees within the parliament, the rural committee, etc. Yeah, okay, some discussions happen there, but the majority was decided behind the scenes. You go to the meeting and you already know what the outcome is. I knew that the vote was going to pass that day because it had been decided before. So in the sense that when you go into lobby efforts, you should not think that if I only attend the meetings, then I will be fine, because if you don't get this constant feed of the gossip, of the decisions, of the who swaps what for what, etc., obviously animal welfare is not a national priority. then this bill also was at the verge of getting thrown out for the God knows how many nth time. But luckily all went well and the coalition still went for it and we were able to achieve it. But these political games of, okay, I give you that vote, but then let's drop that bill, etc., that's just something, that's how politics works. So I'm really happy that we were able to achieve it, obviously. It was intense work. Yeah. Yeah. And all that we learned from that will now go into 2 new initiatives that we're starting with lobby work. And it was good to start with these cute type of animals because that's like a warm-up about factory farming, about how do we keep animals in cages, etc. Because the next topics will not be maybe that cute in the direct sense. So. And the relationships we were able to build will be an enormously positive impact, definitely for the future campaign as well. And basically, when I mentioned that media work was a part of it, that whatever you can turn it into a visual media event. Visual meaning that this is when we presented our digital signatures to the frontman of the parliament. You don't just give them a piece of paper. You do this humongous placard. I could barely, it was very heavy, very big, good for photos. Very good. Completely absurd, very good, yeah. I don't know if, you see, this is the day when we got the ban. Huge fox, very big fox. You understand, like very visual. You want to be, you in the press release, you say that there will be, we also did like humongous foxes there, that they will have something to take photos of, something visual. They want it for their videos and pictures, so that the footage would be appetizing for them. And also, you need to take into consideration that politicians want good publicity to show voters their work. And that also means that we need to be very proactive in how do we use this media potential. We organized public debates, fed the media expert opinions, did regular, really good press releases, making sure that this is something that is talked about, and pulled strings by feeding the media potential topics to cover on this. So it was like you wake up in the morning, you're like, okay, what can else how can we cover? You're like hungry in the sense that constantly thinking new ideas, how to make sure that politicians see this, your main target group who will be the deciding, the party who will give their votes in society, that they will see these things. And making sure that you have photos of everything. So yeah, we met a lot with the ministers, and making sure that others know as well that these are the influential people and they are in the loop about this, etc. So making sure that these are shown. So let's go to another topic where a lot of animals can be helped on an institutional level. That is corporate outreach. That means for us, negotiations with food sector companies to switch from caged eggs to cage-free eggs, either in their sale or in their ingredients. It's quite a popular approach among animal welfare organizations who are into effective altruism, and that is something we have been doing in Estonia as well. When I think about how to summarize our experience as well, that it was definitely difficult to start the campaign, to convince the first retail store to go with the initiative. Our proposal to them is that in 2025, we would like all of the eggs that you are selling to come from cage-free production facilities. So yeah, there's like a time for them to go into this, etc. But how do you convince the first company if you don't have victories in your bag already? And in the beginning, we had to do a lot of pressure campaigning for this. Now it's a bit less, but as a strategic tool in your toolbox, this is something that usually goes hand in hand. The food sector in Estonia, coming from a post-Soviet country, etc., rarely does any either environmental or animal welfare changes without pressure from external sources. So in that sense as well, that we could never rely on the fact that, okay, yeah, these changes will happen inevitably at some point, because it takes a lot of work for these changes to occur. And some tips about like meeting with the CEOs or the sales representatives of these companies is that in the beginning you probably will have a very difficult time convincing them. And on this photo as well, this is actually pretty interesting. This is the CSR manager of Rimi Estonia. This is something I'm really happy about this photo, because we had a very nasty pressure campaign against Rimi. We won, they went cage-free, everything went well, but the process was quite intense. And for a long time, they were quite upset with us after they had to go through this pressure campaign. But this is last year, when we had an event, we introduced a report about the food sector going cage-free. Yeah, and she did a talk there, and I am asking, it's like an online event here, and we're live doing an event here, and things are good now. They are supporting this whenever we need quotes about a big retailer saying something, yeah, cage-free is very good, yeah, then they are supporting. So you can achieve this as well, that it's not only black and white, but it takes a bit of time to be able to come to this. With corporate outreach as well, that it's definitely a power game. In the beginning, especially, for example, if I am a younger woman and I am meeting with an older man, it's definitely a power imbalance. I come from the third sector, from some NGO. What are NGOs even? In Estonia, we have a lot of work to do on that field. Why the hell should he listen to me? Why, like, who are you to tell me what to do? Really, you understand the situation that an NGO asks for a huge food sector company, please stop selling this product and start selling these. So making sure that the situation is a bit more balanced, just know the jargon, know the body language, know the situation beforehand, because making sure you are super confident there and convincing these people who have every reason to why should I listen to you? Definitely successful corporate outreach also needs public support on the issue to be more impactful, in the sense that if this topic is talked about in the media, if this company already knows that, okay, the consumers are becoming more interested in it, etc., it's way more easier to convince them into doing these changes. And what I definitely, which helped me a lot, is the book Never Split the Difference, negotiating as if your life depended on it. That's definitely a good read in that as well. And a few words about, which I mentioned, these pressure campaigns, which usually go hand in hand with corporate outreach, is that if negotiations fail, that person you are meeting with, they're like, very nice, we don't care, go away, which obviously is something that can happen. You need to have some sort of leverage with which you continue the pressure. It's not that, okay, bye. Okay. What will happen then? Because we are invisible animals, we go all the way, we get the results, whatever it means, or whatever it, we just don't give up. And public pressure campaigns obviously might not be your favorite approach or cup of tea in advocacy, but I need to admit they bring results. They just that is what happened definitely, what helped us get the campaigns running, to get the initial successes. So it means that you damage the reputation of the company, which discredits them with their consumers and public. So yeah, what can you do? Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah. So the point is that, yeah, with this Rimi example, we needed to do a lot of media work, that Rimi supports keeping these poor birds in very bad living conditions, and this is footage from a farm that Rimi buys their eggs, etc. So you take this bigger problem and you put one person, sort of, or one instance who you start to focus on and accuse them, and it works very well. Um, and but it's definitely, you need to understand that it's a lot of conflict, it's a lot of confrontation, it's quite stressful, obviously, but in the long run, the more CSR, corporate social responsibility, becomes a bigger topic, the less these companies can they just cannot afford these type of campaigns against them. So sometimes what is very effective is that you don't actually need to launch the campaign. What happened with a couple of companies was that we already had the website. We sent like petition, the name of the company does da 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 da. We were able to send them a screenshot and say that this is what we'll launch if you don't announce. And they announced. So we didn't have to go through with the campaign. We didn't have to go through the bloody mess of having to damage their reputation, etc. So that was a very good tip we got from the Open Wing Alliance. But what does a pressure campaign consist of? It means petitions, sign this, that this shop should stop selling eggs that come from torture, etc. Protests, we did a lot of that. But the idea also, in the sense of effectiveness, is that the main goal is to have very good photos of it. You don't need to stand there for hours or whatever. You just need to make sure that the company gets it, that you are very good at marketing this campaign. Media work, stunts, different approach. Oh my God, we had one action where we invited the customers of this company to cut their cards in half, these client cards, what's it called, and send us a video of it. So we compiled and actually we did many videos of that, because quite a lot of people came with it, and they are just cutting their loyalty cards in half because they don't want to support the company that supports animal cruelty. So these are the type of stunts that you need to do. And when we won this campaign, we actually started it when the organization was like 2 months old, and we won it in 4 months of very intensive work. I was really, really happy because obviously, like, it's very fulfilling when you get the results, because it's a huge company, and what they decide will have an effect on tens of thousands of hens who are suffering immensely. And that's why it's all worth it, but you need to take into consideration that definitely negotiations would be better. Okay, so going on to building consumer awareness and public interest. This is also done actually at a protest when we had a pressure campaign at a big company, and this gains a lot of media attention. So my what I'm saying, based on my experience with media work, is that in our country-specific context, meaning that we are an ex-Soviet country, when I talk with colleagues from Western Europe, from other countries, etc., I see that the society and the consumer habits are a bit different. Even, for example, let's say Finland, which was not part of the Soviet Union, etc., making sure that you have free-range products. It's just something that has always been, it's just, they are there. People buy them, etc. It's way more common than in the countries that were part of the Soviet Union. And we don't have that norm that, yeah, sure, I buy cage-free eggs, because for a long time they weren't even available. So I would say that it would probably be almost impossible to achieve what we have achieved so far without intense media work, making sure that public awareness grows. And actually, so far, the feedback that we have got from the food sector, from retailers, is that when they compare consumer habit changes that have happened in the last couple of years, that during the time that Invisible Animals has been doing these campaigns, the changes happening within consumers' egg preferences have been the biggest ever in Estonia. Not like when they compare it with fair trade or organic, or like what are the things that can be compared with. And they say that whatever you are doing, just keep on doing it, because it actually has an impact. So and when we go and meet with the company representative, when they have the data that, yeah, we see that these are really going well, it's way easier to have these negotiations with them. So making sure that public awareness is raising is definitely important. But coming to media work, if you don't know media work and marketing yourself, then find someone who can consult you if you want to do a successful campaign. But I would think that in the long run, developing your media skills and giving good interviews, building good contacts there, it will pay off immensely, because it will build you the good reputation. I can bring an example that when I go and give an interview now, it's they already say, oh yeah, you know this, and you will talk well, and you always stay so calm and bring your points, which are at a very controversial topic. You are able to sort of soothe the topic, etc. And this has been through very systematic work. So I think that this is something that has definitely paid off in our context. And when we talk about public attention in the wider spectrum, then within the topic of reducing farm animal suffering, then our organization needs to constantly be thinking and offering ways to engage the public, whether it's petitions, so we get their emails, so we can ask other things from them as well, email actions, sharing, being part of a community. That is how you grow this one field of life, because I understand that whatever we are asking, it comes through a lot of information noise. Everyone has a lot on their table as it is in life. How do we engage them? How do we become important to them? It's not a very easy question. And making sure that the issue you are fighting for becomes a current issue, and making sure that you build yourself into an opinion leader in that field is definitely systematic work. And time is ruthless, as it goes in life. So, and what happens as a consequence, or what can happen, what has happened in Estonia, is that the better you become at it, the better you are at representing your topic in the media, giving good interviews, being critical towards factory farming, the more attacks you get from opposing sides. So, to sum it up, I will bring an example of what happened in Estonia. So, we were running a campaign against a large retailer, and they pulled some strings and got a very recognized TV show in Estonia to do a piece about what the hell. There's an organization, an NGO in Estonia that pressures large, respectable companies into doing something. How can this be? Where do they get the power, or how can this be, basically? And this is a screenshot of the TV show. It's called like Onlooker or something like that. And it was pretty intense because they tried to portray me as someone who is like getting finances for our campaigns from abroad. Very suspicious, very weird. Not that we have funding from the Open Wing Alliance, which is funded by the Open Philanthropy Project, which is a very legit, effective altruism funding, but they tried to make it look like God knows where money is coming from, do they even know what they are doing, etc. And what happened that they cut together pieces of interviews that didn't even, like, they asked me a question, I answered it, and in the final piece, I was responding to another question. So it was a very interesting, very creative approach, but the negative media attention can be used in your favor if you're smart and know when to engage and when to ignore. For example, with this TV piece, it was very wise of us, we ignored it. In the beginning, we were like, oh no, we need to do a reply and very opinion piece and blah, blah. No, nothing. The more we would have done, the more attention that piece would have gotten. And we ignored it, and I think that was a very wise approach. And in charity work, financials are usually the main target. You can prevent this damage by being super transparent and building a strong system for reporting. And definitely, don't be afraid of conflict, because this confrontation that we sometimes also do in the media is, that's what makes sure, that's why we are here. So that we would confront these factory farming, that we would confront these companies that are doing this work. So it can be difficult. I mean, who likes a conflict? But media likes it. And they will give you coverage, and that will get things going in the long run. So being wise about it will definitely help. We are unable to do everything at this time. We also do a lot of public awareness work with outdoor ads. It is expensive, but it is also a part of this unmeasurable media work. We get it everywhere. The minister is, oh, I saw that your ads are again, like, yeah, these are the sort of anecdotal evidence you get that this is helping. But we see that this is something that we need to do to be able to convince these companies and the politicians to get us the results that we need. And to sum it up, I'm doing a workshop tomorrow about teal organization culture. I will talk about how our organization is built up in a way that we achieve these types of results. You are very welcome there. If Swapcard says that the places are full, you can still come. We can make it work. A few people will manage. And then I will talk about everything which I wanted to mention there. And I put here, if you're in the beginning phases of your work, a few book recommendations that have helped me a lot, that have had a positive impact on the way that we do things. It was really difficult because I have read a lot, so it's difficult to choose, but maybe these will help you as well. Thank you. Thank you for everything you do here, because we cannot take it for granted that people around us care and care very strategically or think about effectiveness or results. But we here, we're that kind of people. So it gives so much back to be able to be among you all and to see that interest and that passion towards being really smart in charity. So thank you. Take care.